African countries have been saying for decades that foreign troops, military bases, and drones are being used to exploit and smuggle African resources. However, this was considered something hard to trust. We mean, how could a famous world organization like the UN and Western countries be engaged in such blatantly shady activities? Well, things have now been exposed as the people in Congo just caught a drone about to take off from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Even if these drones are usually manless and controlled from military bases, they have space inside to carry guns and a lot more things than you can imagine. Once the villagers caught the drone, they checked what was inside. Allegedly, they found guns, parachutes, and gold, besides one precious element, which you will know about in this video. Even if the UN troops are staying as peacekeepers, they have engaged themselves in such exploitation. This clarifies that they have been stealing the resources from the start. So, what more was inside the UN drone and what did Congo do in response? Let's know about that in this video. Earlier, there had been reports that UN peacekeeping missions were engaging in illegal activities in Africa. United Nations peacekeepers were revealed to have provided armed escorts to gold smuggling. According to a UN report later disclosed by Reuters, they supplied food to illegal gold smugglers in eastern Congo. The report explicitly stated that the UN peacekeepers did not directly participate in exchanging weapons for gold. However, it was an illicit acknowledgement that they were indeed involved. Later, human rights groups accused UN peacekeepers of trafficking arms in return for gold with the militia. They were tasked to disarm while stationed in the eastern mining town of Mongwalu in late 2005. The internal UN report, derived from investigations, confirmed that the peacekeepers facilitated transport, meals, and security for the group during their visits to Mongwalu in November and December 2005. During these visits, the smugglers acquired significant amounts of unwrought gold without government authorization. The report did not specify the compensation received by the UN peacekeepers for their assistance. When the allegations emerged, the UN initially dismissed them as malicious and distorted, but acknowledged an ongoing investigation. Human Rights Watch, a New York-based organization that initially raised the accusations, criticized the report for not thoroughly probing the collaboration, highlighting the involvement of senior Congolese army officers. Anneke van Woudenberg, a Congo researcher for HRW, characterized the situation as a mafia-like organization profiting collectively. The report did not reference a letter circulated by two former members of the Front of Nationalists and Integrationists, a militia responsible for the murders of 9 UN peacekeepers in 2005. The letter claimed they had worked for the UN peacekeepers, providing gold in exchange for arms and ammunition to secure the town of Mongwalu. The findings jeopardized the reputation of the UN's 17,000-member peacekeeping mission, which was pivotal in guiding the Central African nation through landmark polls after the 1998-2003 war, but has faced recurrent scandals. Later, the mission announced an investigation into separate allegations that UN peacekeepers traded food and military intelligence with Rwandan Hutu rebels in return for gold. Historically, the responsibility for punishing peacekeepers involved in misconduct has been left to the troop-contributing nations, with severe penalties being infrequent. A case involved a military court in Bangladesh, convicting 3 of the nation's UN soldiers for using excessive force, resulting in the deaths of 2 Congolese detainees and the beating of several others in early 2005. 2 soldiers received sentences of 89 days in prison, while the third was condemned to serve 60 days. Later, Human Rights Watch wrote a letter to the UN, asking for a proper investigation. It was written that while acknowledging the necessity of investigating these allegations, Human Rights Watch was disappointed by the apparent limitations of the report's conclusions, the lack of transparency throughout the process, the sluggish pace of the investigation, and, most notably, the absence of concrete accountability measures. It was said that the reported involvement of only one peacekeeper in illegal activities contradicts earlier information provided by Human Rights Watch in 2005. Its findings indicated a network involving Congolese army officers, Kenyan traders, and UN peacekeepers smuggling millions of gold from Ituri. Human Rights Watch conveyed surprise at the report's conclusion that only one peacekeeper was implicated. It was also said that the UN investigation dismissed allegations of weapons trading between UN peacekeepers and the Nationalist and Integrationist Front militia in Ituri. However, statements from FNI senior commanders confirmed receiving weapons and ammunition from UN peacekeepers in 2005. The seriousness of the alleged abuses by the UN peacekeepers in a region where war crimes and crimes against humanity have occurred cannot be overstated. The involvement of UN peacekeepers in gold trading and the potential provision of arms to militia groups directly contribute to the violence they are meant to prevent. The prolonged investigation process and the lack of action raised questions about how the UN investigates itself, especially considering allegations involving Indian peacekeepers, Bangladeshi peacekeepers, and reports of sexual exploitation. The Human Rights Watch later said that besides enhancing accountability in the DRC mission, it believed the United Nations must overhaul its internal oversight system. A mere investigation was insufficient. The UN must have acted on its investigation's results to prevent such problems' recurrence. However, one thing should be noted here. What if UN peacekeeping missions were doing the same in a European country? Would they have been hidden, and the investigation would have been absurd? It sent a clear message that the UN troops were not stealing and smuggling gold and providing guns to the militia in return for gold in their personal capacity. Rather, the UN itself was involved. It becomes impossible for the UN troops to act on their will, especially in African countries where their actions are monitored. BBC programs brought attention to the incomplete investigation by the UN Internal Oversight Arm into UN peacekeepers allegedly engaged in gold and weapons smuggling in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The allegations against certain UN peacekeepers in Congo were serious, but they were unattended, damaging the United Nations' reputation. Information from Human Rights Watch, supported by BBC investigations, suggested that substantial allegations of illegal behavior by UN peacekeepers in Congo have been disregarded, downplayed, or set aside, with minimal accountability for acknowledged crimes. In September 2007, Human Rights Watch sought a meeting with Inga-Britt Alenius, Undersecretary General for OIOS, to discuss concerns, but the request was deemed unnecessary. Therefore, Human Rights Watch commended the UN's commitment to transparency and accountability. OIOS ignored new information confirming weapons charges. Pakistani authorities claim exoneration, but OIOS found one officer involved in illegal gold trading and others obstructing the investigation. Similar issues arise with allegations against Indian peacekeepers in North Kivu, Congo. A February 2008 OIOS assessment lists 44 allegations, recommending further investigation. However, OIOS, at a senior level, pursued only one allegation, condensing the preliminary report to a 4-page memo. The memo acknowledged evidence of gold purchase and unlawful detention, but dismissed other serious charges, raising questions about the thoroughness of the investigation. External reviews from 2007 highlight structural issues within OIOS, suggesting a need for significant change. The toxic management environment and lack of accountability jeopardize the reputation of the DRC mission and peacekeepers worldwide. That's when you should know about the UN peacekeeping missions in Congo to understand how much the country could have been exploited until now. The initiation of the United Nations operation in the Congo, called ONUC, in 1960, responding to the Congo crisis, represented the UN's inaugural venture into peacekeeping with substantial military capabilities, establishing it as one of the most significant and expansive UN missions. However, secretly, it was one of the most profitable UN missions, as tons of gold would have been stolen from Congo. As the earlier incidents proved that exploitation done by the UN missions is never recorded and investigated properly, it opens the door for thousands of possibilities on what the UN missions would have done in Congo. The internal conditions in Congo were perhaps made to smoothen the path for a UN peacekeeping mission. In reality, it was the UN gold smuggling mission that focused on engaging in every shady activity to steal and smuggle gold. After gaining independence from Belgium in June 1960, the Congo descended into turmoil, prompting Belgium to intervene ostensibly to restore order and protect Belgian nationals. Responding to the Congolese government's plea for assistance, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 143 on July 14, 1960, urging Belgium to withdraw its troops and empowering the Secretary General to provide military aid to the Congolese government. The initial deployment of UN troops, primarily from African and Asian nations, occurred the following day. As circumstances worsened, with issues such as the uprising in Katanga, the assassination of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, the collapse of the central government, and the involvement of foreign mercenaries, ONUC's initial mandate underwent expansion. It broadened to include safeguarding the Congo's territorial integrity and political independence, preventing an imminent civil war, and removing all unauthorized foreign armed forces. The world saw something it had never seen earlier. The UN directly controlled a country, internally and externally. At its peak, UN forces consisted of nearly 20,000 military personnel from over 24 countries, with India, Ireland, and Sweden assuming prominent leadership roles. Between September 1961 and December 1962, amid heightened hostilities, ONUC shifted from a peacekeeping to a military force, engaging in conflicts and offensives against secessionist and mercenary forces. Following the reintegration of Katanga in February 1963, ONUC underwent a gradual phase-out, with increased civilian aid becoming the most extensive UN assistance effort. Today there has been a growing debate on why the conflict started in Congo immediately after its independence. Whether they were natural or some foreign forces were involved in creating a need for UN peacekeeping missions in Congo. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Congo achieved independence on June 30, 1960, but disorder and mutinies ensued due to the belated Africanization of the force publique by Belgian commander Emile Janssens. Belgium's intervention, leading to accusations of neo-colonial aggression by the Congolese government, saw Belgian officers accused of inciting the mutiny and attempting to annex the Congo. Belgium's intervention, aimed at protecting Belgians and mining interests, resulted in the secession of Katanga, a mineral-rich region. On July 10, Belgian troops, without a request from the Congolese, entered Elizabethville to control the situation. On July 11, with Belgian support, Moise Tshombe declared Katanga's independence, viewed by many as a puppet move for Belgian interests. During the crisis, on July 12, the President and Prime Minister of the Congo sought UN assistance. UN Secretary-General Dag Hammarskjöld urgently addressed the Security Council, leading to the adoption of Resolution 143 on July 13. The resolution called on Belgium to withdraw its troops and authorized the Secretary-General to facilitate withdrawal, maintain law and order, and legitimize the post-colonial government. However, the Congolese leaders did not know that it was the start of a more systemic exploitation by the UN itself. The mission received Security Council approval with 8 in favor, none against, and 3 abstentions. ONUC's mandate extended to preserving the Congo's territorial integrity by removing foreign mercenaries supporting Katanga's secession, representing an unprecedented role for a UN peacekeeping force. Later, the UN faced extensive criticism during its involvement in the Congolese crisis, particularly in its management of situations such as Lumumba's death and the secession in Katanga. It was not doing the tasks it was supposed to do, while incidents of its involvement in gold smuggling were piling up. Following Lumumba's death, the UN received widespread accusations, with many asserting that better protection should have been provided to him. In a notable demonstration in New York, African American protesters breached the UN building, disrupting the General Assembly. The UN's office in Belgium also became a target. The USSR also expressed disapproval of the UN's role. On December 23, 1960, Khrushchev addressed the UN General Assembly, highlighting the controversial political direction of the operation, accusations of responsibility for Lumumba's death, favoritism toward Lumumba's political opponents, and initial hesitancy to address the situation in Katanga. According to Nori McQueen, but nobody could know the profits the UN was making from stealing and smuggling gold illegally. No evidence was allowed to surface, and the reports issued by credible sources like BBC and Human Rights Watch were rejected. As of October 2017, the total strength of UN peacekeeping troops in the DRC was around 18,300, with more than 30 nations contributing military and police personnel, and India being the largest contributor. The origin of the second UN military presence in the Democratic Republic of the Congo can be traced back to the Lusaka ceasefire agreement on July 17, 1999, and United Nations Security Council Resolution 1258 of August 6, 1999, which authorized the deployment of a maximum of 90 officers. You see, the UN increased the officers' numbers from 90 to 18,300. Why was that done? If things could be handled using 90 officers, why 18,300 were sent? And more importantly, why did these thousands of troops even fail to put an end to the violence? Well, you can guess the answer. On February 24, 2000, with Resolution 1291, the UN Security Council authorized the deployment of a maximum of 5,537 military personnel in the DRC, including 500 military observers. Major General Mountaga Diallo from Senegal was appointed Monusco's military force commander on April 4, 2000. The mandate included monitoring the ceasefire agreement, developing an action plan for its implementation, working with parties to release prisoners of war, facilitating humanitarian assistance, and protecting UN personnel and civilians under imminent threat of physical violence. But none of these objectives were achieved. Acting under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter, MONUC was authorized to take necessary actions to protect UN personnel and facilities. MONUC officials remained silent on significant matters related to mining in Congo, which occurred alongside activities such as bloodletting, arms trading, and extortion. For instance, Anvil Mining has been implicated in massacres in the DRC. Among Anvil's directors is former U.S. Ambassador Kenneth Brown, who served at U.S. embassies in Brussels, Kinshasa, Congo-Brazzaville, and South Africa. Brown was Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Africa under George Shultz and George H.W. Bush, and he was Director of Central African Affairs. Interestingly, Brown succeeded William Lacy Swing, the head of MONUC in the DRC, as ambassador to the Republic of Congo. Meanwhile, the former top internal intelligence and security chief of the United Nations Observers Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo has worked for Anvil Mining in Katanga since 2006. Now, people have seen blatant events that prove the earlier reports. Conflicting reports surround a UN drone that reportedly crashed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with suggestions that it carried gold, guns, and diamonds. Some sources assert that the drone was transporting gold and guns, while others argue it was on a humanitarian aid mission. Currently, the UN has not released an official statement regarding the incident, but everyone knows the reality. The drone is believed to have been operated by the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC, known as Monusco, which has been present in the country since 1999, aiding in its stabilization following years of civil war. The crash occurred in the eastern province of North Kivu, an area known for various armed groups. Responsibility for the crash is yet to be determined. The alleged presence of gold and guns on the drone has sparked concerns about the UN's role in the DRC, with some critics accusing the organization of participating in the country's mineral trade, often associated with violence and corruption. The UN has strongly denied these allegations, emphasizing that its mission in the DRC is exclusively focused on peace-building and humanitarian assistance. The drone crash is anticipated to complicate the UN's efforts in the DRC, potentially leading to questions about the organization's use of drones in its peacekeeping operations. There have been claims made by those present around the drone that it was carrying over 900 pounds of pure gold, alongside diamonds, guns, and parachutes. In response, President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of the Congo has declared that he directed his government to hasten the withdrawal of the United Nations peacekeeping mission, Monusco, ensuring that it begins by the end of this year. Taking over from a previous UN operation in 2010, Monusco aimed to address insecurity in the DRC's east, where armed groups compete for control over territory and resources. However, the mission has come under increasing criticism in recent years, with detractors arguing that it failed to safeguard civilians from violence, leading to deadly protests. Not only that, but incidents where UN drones are carrying gold are further exacerbating the situation. During his address to the UN General Assembly, Tshisekedi expressed dissatisfaction with the peacekeeping missions deployed over the past 25 years, stating their inefficiency in handling rebellions and armed conflicts. Consequently, he directed the government to engage in discussions with U.S. authorities for an expedited withdrawal of Monusco, advancing the start of the phased withdrawal from December 2024 to December 2023. This decision follows a crackdown on anti-UN demonstrations in the eastern city of Goma last month, resulting in at least 56 deaths and numerous injuries. Another protest in July 2022 resulted in over 15 deaths, including 3 peacekeepers in Goma and the city of Butembo. Jean-Maubert Senga from Amnesty International noted that citizens had expected the UN to protect them when their government couldn't. However, the UN's inability to prevent or adequately respond to attacks over the years has disillusioned people. President Tshisekedi's announcement coincides with the recent extension of the mandate of a regional military force deployed by the 7-nation East African Community to suppress violence in eastern DRC. President Tshisekedi aims to expedite the departure of the world's second-largest UN peacekeeping force from the country, citing its failure to address conflicts in the eastern region. In his UN address, he criticized the 17,000-strong peacekeeping mission for its inability to confront the ongoing fighting in eastern Congo, urging the country to take control of its destiny. He proposed advancing the start of the peacekeeping mission's accelerated retreat to alleviate tensions in the region. What do you think? Should other African countries also kick out the UN peacekeeping missions? Isn't it true that even the UN is being used as a tool by the West to steal African resources and transport them to Europe? Let us know your thoughts on whether Congo did right by expelling the UN troops, or whether it should do more to teach them a lesson. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.